Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Dr. Witherspoon, information was presented on the status of legal matters in the district. This is an information item. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
This is the information item presented in executive session. Any questions or comments regarding this one item? Ms. King?
I have two actually. One, Miss Williams, if you would indulge me, I think that I'd like to ask you a question of process on the legal when we meet in executive session or not on legal advice. Do tell me when legal matters arise, and particularly when, let's say, the board is either the defendant or the co-defendant on a lawsuit, for example, and this is a hypothetical, question. It can happen. Does the administration inform the board?
Yes.
Okay. In what time frame?
Depending on when it occurs, it's hard to give an exact time frame, but as soon as possible.
Would you say, as soon as possible, right? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
And if the board is a target of a lawsuit, is the board entitled to receive legal advice?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And then upon receiving that legal advice, then the board comes out in public session and can take a vote on whether or not to just act on the recommendation of the legal advice. Is that right?
No, that is not necessarily right.
Okay. Explain that to me, please.
I will be happy to advise on that matter during an executive session.
Why? It's just a process and procedure standpoint. There's nothing to talk about closed door in that.
I beg to differ.
Well, you'll have to explain to me. If the board, if you make talk about a legal advice in executive session, which hopefully is privileged under FOIA and is really justified. Coming out of executive session in public session, wouldn't the board eventually vote to uphold, your have a course of action based on your legal advice?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so what would be the cases when the board would do that?
I'm not at liberty to provide that response right now.
Why? It's a process. It's just a process.
I'm not.
What's privilege? What is confidential about just the process?
I'm unable to address the process at this time.
Okay, so I've tried to review our policies on legal, and can the administration make legal decisions to, let's say, on a lawsuit without the input of the board?
It depends on what is involved.
Right.
Well, let's say the board is named as a defendant. Can the administration not talk to the board about it and then make decisions and courses of action without the board input?
I'm not aware that that has happened with this board.
Right.
All right, well, I'll give you an example. It just happened. The district was served with a lawsuit on September the 6th, that was a Friday, with the lawsuit of Nancy Mayor Monty versus Richland County School District 1 and the Richland 1 School Board. The board got served, I guess, when we were actually, I think, in executive session and somebody served the board. During this executive session, that topic never came up that there was a lawsuit.
That is not true.
Yeah, it came up.
It's not on the report.
Came up.
I can't put something on the report when it happens. and the report has already been submitted. I can't add to a report, and a report has already been submitted. And as you are aware, when things come up rapidly like that, the board is informed.
Well, I was never informed.
You were at the meeting?
Yep.
I was never informed. It's not on your legal report. In fact, we had committee meeting last week, and it still wasn't on your report.
Well, your committee did not vote to go into executive session.
No, we did go in executive session. Don't you remember? We did vote to go in executive session, but all the same, I have privy to the legal report, and it's not on there.
We went into executive session based on what was in the agenda, and you only wanted to discuss certain things.
No, ma'am. You could have said it was
Yes,
very
yes.
legitimate for you to. It was very legitimate for you to inform me of that law. I was not.
Well, in actuality, information was provided prior thereto anyway, and there was nothing new to state.
Well, I was never provided with the information. Maybe some board members did. I'm not saying that they didn't. I was not provided with that information. The court hearing date was never given.
Yes, it was.
It was.
Okay,
Yes, it
well,
was.
when was it?
At the board meeting during executive session.
Well, okay. Well, usually I have pretty sharp ears.
I can't speak to that.
Well, that's good humor, and I appreciate it. But then we didn't talk about it until today. It's been 2 weeks, and attorneys and the board never got to give its input on the court of action when the board is named in the lawsuit, and whatever result of that lawsuit reflects on the board. So that's one thing when the board gets named in a lawsuit and it's a personnel matter or an injury, etc. But this is actually on a matter that the board, it's at the core of what the board does, which is setting meetings and agendas and FOIA. So it's an attack on the board. And the board never received legal advice on the course of action. So there was a hearing a few days later, and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Maybe some other members knew. Then there was a motion filed a motion for reconsideration, and there was no input for the board either on that one, right? So, I want to put that on the record because at no point did we actually receive legal advice on this. At no point did the board, which is named in the lawsuit, receive legal advice and had its chance to choose the course of action for this. I'm really, I'm beyond disappointed, but frankly, that robs me, an elected official, of my constitutional rights on this board. That's not acceptable. I have one question about the Miramonte versus the school board and school district. So in the order from the court, the district is ordered to pay for attorney's fees about $4,200 for the plaintiff. But we've also incurred fees from attorneys, etc., plus your time. You're valuable. I want to know, who's paying for this? Is it coming from the insurance trust?
No.
So this is general funds money.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that is also problematic because we're giving, instead of money going to the classroom, we're giving it to lawyers. Now, I will put a question to this board, and I move, Mr. Chair, that we withdraw, based on the legal advice that we received in executive session, I move that we withdraw the notice of appeal for this particular lawsuit.
To ask for lack of a second. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you.
Next on the item is 8.02, Superintendent's Report. Yes, sir.
Chair, I just want to give another side to that committee meeting.
Yes, sir.
That was a meeting that she was in and she gave advice.
Which she now? Which she?
This is Attorney Williams.
Mm-hmm.
She gave legal advice on all cases. It was a very disruptive meeting, which is why some things have been missed out.
Mm-hmm.
It was a new challenge to what we have done as a norm.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, there may have been things that went out of people's perspective because they didn't understand how to take care of the process. So therefore, I want to say that she was telling the truth from my perspective on what she said she did report out.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Appreciate that. Again, Attorney Williams, thank you for your report. This was an information item. Next is